RNZ News at 6, I'm Marama Tifole. New Zealanders are being told the country can't afford to keep the borders closed until everyone has had a COVID vaccine. The government has laid out a plan to start allowing quarantine-free travel from early next year. It wants as many people as possible to be immunised before that, but the COVID response minister, Chris Hipkins, has told checkpoint border changes will go ahead.
We have to start doing that. We can't wait for people who are indicating that they aren't going to take up the opportunity to be vaccinated. We can't wait for them indefinitely. We need to give them a reasonable opportunity to learn about the vaccine, to get vaccinated. But we're not going to be able to stay in the position that we are in now indefinitely.
The government's COVID-19 business advisor, Rob Fife, says it's crucial the vaccine rollout goes to plan. If border restrictions are to be relaxed, Mr. Fife says a lot now rides on the delivery of the vaccine program.
I break down 10 in our strategy at an 8, probably out of 10. I think our execution has probably been a 5 or 6 out of 10, and I think we need to nail this next phase.
Rob Fife says the emergence of the Delta variant has been a game changer, and he'd rather wait a little longer to get everyone vaccinated before the country starts opening up. Christchurch City Councillors have reversed their decision to slash the number of seats in the city's new multi-million-dollar arena. Council met again today to make a final decision on the capacity of the Canterbury multi-use arena after it was revealed the 30,000 seat option would cost an extra $50 million rather than the $88 million originally thought. Councillors voted by majority this afternoon to backtrack on an earlier decision. It's called to trim the number of seats to 25,000, sparked anger among some residents and spurred an online petition. That petition, signed by more than 24,000 people, was presented to councillors this afternoon. Councillor Sam McDonald, who pushed for the decision to be reversed, says residents were calling out for a bigger stadium in the city.
It's been 2 weeks of real frustration from the community that we potentially didn't get a decision right. It is in no way being generated by us. This is a community groundswell from the public. And I think we do need to be cognizant of that.
Maritime New Zealand has laid charges against the ports of Auckland over the death of a port worker almost a year ago. Father of 7, Butternut was killed last August after being crushed when a container was dropped during a lifting operation. Sarah Robson reports. Maritime New Zealand says it filed charges in the Auckland District Court today. The port company faces 3 charges under the Health and Safety at Work Act. One of the charges carries a maximum penalty of a fine of $3 million. Another carries a maximum fine of $1.5 million. An individual who hasn't been named is facing 2 charges. No court dates have yet been set. More than 100 owners of leaky homes say they didn't expect to lose their case against cladding giant James Hardy. A High Court judgment says the 144 plaintiffs failed to prove the Hardy Text cladding system caused their properties weather tightness problems. Plaintiff Meredith Osmond says the group was confident they could win the case.
Absolutely a committed, tight, functioning group took the action based on sound legal advice. So, we're looking at where we go from here.
James Hardy, ANZ Country Manager John O'Neill, says the ruling supports the company's belief that it behaved responsibly. Canberra is the latest Australian state to go into lockdown with a new COVID-19 case detected in the community. There are traces of the virus in the city's wastewater, but it's not known who is infected. From tonight, residents will only be able to leave their homes in the next week for essential reasons. The ACT's Chief Minister Andrew Barr is calling for calm as panic buying sets in.
What we need is people to come in, get what they need, and leave. This is not an opportunity to go to Bunnings to browse. This is not an opportunity to hang around the local shops. Get in, get what you need, and leave.
It had previously been more than 100 days since the last locally acquired case in the Australian Capital Territory. A skier who broke their leg on Aficionado today has been successfully taken off the mountain. A group of 7 skiers activated a beacon this morning in the Hills Gate area. The Rescue Coordination Centre says the injured person has been successfully flown to the Twizel Medical Centre. It says a second helicopter will take the skier to Christchurch Hospital. It's 5 minutes past 6. To sports now. Wallabies coach Dave Rennie has brought Marika Koroibete straight back into the Australian starting 15 for Saturday's second Bledisloe Cup test at Eden Park. The winger was put down from the first test after breaking team curfew. Rennie says it was a simple decision to recall Koroibete because he rates him amongst the best players in the world.
Yeah, obviously incredibly quick, very physical. He's not a big man, but he's made of concrete. So he hits hard and he carries hard, and phenomenal athletic and work rates. His numbers are outrageous.
The All Blacks have rearranged their back line for the second test, with midfield backs Anton Leonard-Brown sidelined with a knee injury. Rico Ioane has moved from the wing to centre, with Sevu Reece switching to the left flank, and a fit again. Will Jordan is back on the right wing. All Whites Chris Wood and Winston Reid could miss the opening round of English football's Premier League this weekend following their return from the Olympics. Burnley only see Wood as a hopeful starter against Brighton and Hove Albion, while Reid hasn't returned to training with West Ham after suffering a knee injury in Japan. Reid was on loan at Brentford last season and helped them gain promotion to the Premier League and is now back with the Hammers. And Tokyo bronze medalist Lydia Ko is one of 32 Olympians who will line up at the Scottish Open tonight. It's the last warm-up event for next week's final golf major of the year, the British Open. And that's the news.
Tonight on Nights, our changing world is looking for birds in the bush, 40 of them. Robins recently released into a Manawatu reserve. Silver Timbre is on the line from Estonia. Dean Whiting is getting to grips with our Maori heritage. And Space-Based co-founder Evelyn Pack-Dahlstrom on how satellites might help us to dig ourselves out of the hole we seem to be creating around climate change. I'm nice to meet Brian Crump after the news at 7 on RSD National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Friday, Northland to Manawatu, also Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and the central high country. Partly cloudy with isolated showers, turning to rain for a time tomorrow. Gisborne and Hawkesbury, fine, a few showers for tomorrow. Whenua to Wellington and Wairarapa, also Marlborough, Nelson, Canterbury Plains and Christchurch. Mostly cloudy with isolated showers tonight. A period of rain tomorrow morning and scattered showers. However, becoming fine in Nelson and Canterbury. Bulla and Westland, showers turning to rain this evening with heavy falls. Rain easing to showers early tomorrow. Canterbury High Country, Otago and Southland cloudy with rain this evening and severe northwest gales in exposed places, becoming fine tomorrow. For Fiordland, periods of rain heavy for a time today with severe northwest gales in exposed places, easing this evening. And for our friends in their Kuku, Chatham Islands, mainly fine with rain later tomorrow. It's 8 minutes past 6.
Kia ora, airborne, no mai, hoki mai. This is Checkpoint for Lisa Owen DNA. The tourism industry is welcoming a new roadmap to reopen Aotearoa's borders next year while preparing for more tough times ahead. Today, the Prime Minister announced the immediate focus is to ramp up the vaccination rollout and then look to a phased reopening of the border once there's good coverage. The new border system will be based on low, medium and high-risk entry paths, kicking in from early next year. Tourism operators told our reporter Keith Brunton some clarity is much appreciated, but many will remain in survival mode until the planes begin touching down.
Vaccines, border testing, and monitoring of symptoms when you travel will eventually become our baseline. We will get used to it. Our goal as New Zealanders is to get to that place as quickly as we can with as little health and economic disruption as we can.
Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern outlining the brave new world when international travel seems less of a pipe dream. The plan includes speeding up the vaccination rollout this year and allowing those vaccinated to start travelling again at the beginning of next year as part of a risk-based pathway system of travel. She describes it as a careful and deliberate approach.
Rushing could see us in the situation many other countries are finding themselves in, where after sustained periods of case numbers falling due to vaccination, they're finding them rise again after relaxing their settings and opening their borders. So our plan is to reopen in a phased way. We'll assess and check before we take each step.
Tourism Industry Outsiders Chief Executive Chris Roberts says the plan is no quick fix, but it could set the country up well in the long term.
Really pleased to see the trial that's going to begin in October for New Zealanders to make short trips overseas and not have to come back to MIQ. That's not an immediate tourism benefit to New Zealand, but it does test our border processes, and the payoff will be, if that trial works really well, the next year we'll be able to bring in people from low-risk countries without putting them into MIQ, and that's when the opportunities will come for tourism.
He's expecting some pent-up demand from vaccinated travellers.
I think most travellers will believe that travelling to New Zealand is a safe option and probably one of the safest that there is anywhere in the world. What will that travel journey look like? How many requirements will be in place, and will it be worth the effort? That will be the question would-be travellers will be asking themselves.
In Rotorua, Tapuia Chief Executive Tim Cotter isn't surprised by the border reopening timeframe.
I'm pretty comfortable that the position is to get safe, get us all vaccinated as best we can, and then start to open up to the world as we progressively go forward. But don't do it in a rush. Do it as a progressive thing. Carefully manage it and carefully manage the rebuild of tourism, really.
He's predicting it will take some time for travel confidence to rebuild. Travelling tourism boss Mark Quickfall says Fortress New Zealand can't last forever, so a border plan will help them to prepare. But he isn't expecting an easy road to recovery.
Looking ahead, we just haven't sort of said that when we move out of winter into summer, it will be quieter again, and that's concerning. We're hoping that the Australians will be travelling, but certainly between now and 2022, it's going to be pretty tough going for the tourism industry in general. So, no, it's a matter of once again hanging in there and just riding this out.
He says there is work to be done before the border is reopened.
Our first plan for tourism needs to be that will allow businesses to reset. And as I said, there will be numbers that will disappear potentially if it's dragged on for too long. Then we need to recover, we need to rebuild, and then we need to reconnect.
Vaccinations will be open to all eligible ages from the 1st of September, and it's only once jabs are in arms that the drawbridge can begin to be winched down.
Businesses are queuing up to be part of a pilot scheme allowing vaccinated travelling workers to self-isolate at home as part of the government's roadmap to relaxing border restrictions by the first quarter of next year. Deputy Mayor Jacinda Ardern says the trial will be very limited with strict conditions and monitoring. The companies involved will be named and the travel must be essential to maintaining their business. The pilot's expected to start in October. Export New Zealand's Executive Director Catherine Baird joins me now. Catherine, did the roadmap meet your expectations?
Look, really fantastic to see it announced. There's been a lot of pent-up desire for this. Obviously, exporters have done incredibly well to really keep their businesses going over a year and a half of no travel. And some of them are critical businesses in that they've got, really strategic things they need to be travelling for. So there's definitely a list of those businesses that we know about who would be very keen to participate in trials.
Yeah, so what's the deal? Full and orderly queue now. What kind of demand do you reckon from within your members there will be?
Yeah, well, look, we've been sending through a few that we think are special cases because, they have had sort of urgent need to be overseas. And they're not just around trade shows, they're things like, sometimes particularly manufacturers who are doing quite big bits of kit have to go and install it. And those are high value jobs, and for a small or medium sized business, that could make or break your business really. So there are a number of companies in that kind of category.
Catherine, any idea of numbers? Because, the criteria that's been set out by the Prime Minister today is they need to be fully vaccinated. The need to travel has to be linked to maintaining their business. Essential, not just a couple of weeks away from New Zealand. So with the companies that you've been dealing with, what kind of numbers do you reckon would actually meet those base markers for trying to get into the pilot?
Look, we always maintain it's not a huge number, whether it's like 100 or a couple of hundred. I mean, obviously there's businesses that just want to get away to do trade shows and that kind of thing, but we've definitely got some that we think have a really strong case because it's, quite critical projects. So I think it wouldn't be too hard to get a decent list. I mean, obviously the government's probably going to want to ensure that they are the size of business that has good processes and procedures and good health and safety and all of that kind of thing. I think they'll be wanting businesses that look well established and trustworthy and have a good track record. I'm sure that will play into it. But there'll be plenty of demand. I mean, we're starting to get emails already.
Catherine, it won't surprise you. As soon as we started talking about the story, we started getting emails too from our listeners and texts, and they are really sceptical about people's ability to comply with the rules if they're isolating at home. How much confidence and trust do you have in business to, follow the letter of the law, because they could blow it for everybody?
Oh, look, totally, and I'm sure the government will take that into account when those businesses are chosen, so they'll have good track records and good health and safety approaches. And, the businesses themselves, they've got brand reputation to protect, so, and they don't want to muck it up, not only for themselves, but for everybody else. So I think there'll be a high degree of caution and rigour. And, we've had businesses approaching us saying, look, we've got to send people overseas, and a lot of them have. And really they wanted fully vaccines because they didn't want to put their people at risk. So people have been able to get out of the country, they just haven't been able to get back in.
The Prime Minister has indicated, well, she did today, that she's going to name the companies. What do you think that would add to it?
Well, obviously that gives a whole lot of transparency and reputational risk as well. So I'm sure that's why they'll be doing it. So those companies know that they're in the public gaze and they need to play with a straight bat and play by the rules and be super safe.
The other condition is that whoever gets this opportunity to participate in the pilot, they need to be able to isolate entirely away from family, right? No shared facilities. And again, some of the questions we're getting, is this something for the privileged, for those who have a second home or there's a company batch to stay at? Is this a scheme for the elite?
Look, probably in the early days of COVID when some businesses were still travelling and they had people overseas they had to get back, they were doing things like, hiring Airbnb or hiring apartments and that kind of thing. So, if the value of the job is big enough and important enough to the company's bottom line, putting staff up in an Airbnb or something on their own is not a huge cost, really.
In terms of the accelerated vaccination program, right, the government's put the call out from the 1st of September. Anyone who wants a vaccination can get in the queue to get one. And when we get enough people vaccinated, we will be able to relax some of the rules. Are you clear what enough people is, Catherine?
Well, I think that the strategy seems to have been a bit deliberately vague about that, and I think maybe there's some psychology around that of, if you target 80%, then 20% think that they don't have to do it and everyone has to do it for them. Whose approach is right, I don't know. I mean, Australia has set targets, and I guess we'll look back on this and in hindsight will be a great thing and we'll figure out what was their strategy, but let's hope we get a really high vaccination rate. I think the UK is actually highly protected, but it's partly that a lot of people have actually had COVID-19. So the combination of vaccinated people plus people who've been sick and recovered means that they've got a pretty high level of protection.
Good to talk to you, Catherine. Look, Catherine Beard, who's Export New Zealand's Executive Director. It is 19 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. The housing crisis is hitting Kaikooi so badly, residents say overcrowding is now the norm. It's one of the few places in New Zealand with a median house price below $300,000, increasing via interest from out of town, but reducing the rental pool. Sam Ollie reports from Te Tai Tokerau. Realtors, real estate agents and reanga leaders alike, they're all worried about how whānau are making do. While house prices in Kaikohe remain some of the cheapest in the country,
They've risen 22% in the last year, yet in the last census, the median annual income was just $19,000. New figures from the Real Estate Institute of New Zealand out today show Northland was one of two regions that saw an increase in sales volumes in the last year. Kaikohe real estate agent Sandra Robinson says families losing long-term rentals to new owners are having to squeeze in elsewhere in town.
These old health issues start popping up again, but also overcrowding. And of course, then that puts pressure on the house, puts pressure on everything, the whole shebang.
Te Hau Ora o Ngāpuhi Chief Executive, Te Ropu Poa, says there are so few houses available in Kaikohe that whānau put up with substandard homes or split up to avoid sleeping in cars or motels. And those hoping to own their own home in the town are being priced out. She employs 94 staff and estimates less than 20% own the house they live in.
So the feeling Kiwis say that they've ticked all the boxes that the system wants them to comply with. Now can't afford a shithole in Kaikohe. So I want to build them their brand new homes for them and their family to create that asset for whānau intensive future, because you can't get your grandparents off or your parents off, they don't own them anymore.
Te Hau Ora o Ngāpuhi is planning a multi-million-dollar housing development in Kaikohe to ease the pressure. Ms. Poa reckons iwi could do a better job in government agencies like the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development and Kāinga Ora if they have the same resources. And she isn't afraid to tell visiting public servants that.
What he said to me was, oh, it's amazing, we can build 5 new houses in Kaikohe over the next 12 months. I said, wow. So he hasn't talked to me since.
Data from the 2018 census shows dwellings in Northland were the dampest in the country. In Kaikohe specifically, 40% of households have significant mould. Aficionado mother told RNZ her home should have been in a better condition when she moved in, but there is nowhere else she can go if she kicks up a fuss.
Well, I've got a 4-bedroom and it's really cold air, especially for my kids and all that, and it's winter.
This renter says tightened tenancy laws backfired for her last year.
If they were to fix it, the rent was to go up. So I pretty much was living on enough to pay what I was paying. But once I heard that, I left out.
The Whakamana Mai Whānau Trust in Kaikohe has started renting out portable cabins for Māori land. The Whare to the Whenua scheme has been used by about 200 family members since it started last year. The trust also rents out rooms above its office on the main street. Leader Rhonda Zalewski-Toki says she's contacted by people in need on a daily basis.
It feels sometimes that you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders, you know. You have these people come in and we feel morally convicted to try and find a solution. And some of the families we work with, they're hard families, you know. They don't have good credit ratings, they don't have a lot of income, they might have prior things that are challenges or barriers, but they still deserve to be clean and dry and warm.
Similarly, not-for-profit Ngā Whiwhi o Te Wā Kaikohe has set up a base to start building prefabricated cabins for whānau that can easily meet consent standards. Director Paul Repone expects they will be priced from $10,000.
I'm not here for the money. I know there's a whole lot of money to be made in housing, but that's not our focus. Our focus is about making good, healthy homes for whānau and anybody else who wants one.
For those who can't afford to upgrade the house they own, Healthy Homes Tai Tokiro installs subsidised insulation. Operations Manager Haka Bristow has lived the problem.
I was born and raised in a tin shack, so no running water, no power. So I understand how they're living, but to see them 30 years on from where I came from and people still living like that, it is not as quite sad.
The work applies to Mahi.
Just to give that family something and coming out, even though it's a stinking job, getting bashed up around by the files or your ears getting caught in the nails or timber or something like that. It's worth it after you come out and you look at the family and they've got smiles from ear to ear and they're so thankful. The appreciation behind it, yeah, no, it's awesome.
Haka Bristow's team takes referrals from across the region through the DHB, online applications and word of mouth to improve the existing stock until better homes are built from scratch.
to France, where people now have to prove their COVID vaccination and health status before entering cafes or using long-distance transport. The Health Pass law has provoked weekly protests from those who say it breaches fundamental freedoms. But as BBC's Lucy Williamson reports, many support the French government's way of getting society back to normal.
Well, this new law in France seems like the perfect opportunity to wander down to this little bar just around the corner from the Paris Bureau, and a bit of a favourite. I can see just walking up outside the door here, there's a sign telling everyone to prepare their health pass. And inside, Halloween's on duty today.
I didn't have babies before. I didn't have people using condoms. Most people had it, and some of them had to run to the local chemist to get the test done. And they could have lunch with that first.
I love the fact that people are literally running to the chemist to get a test so they can come to the bar.
Yeah, that's it, Well, so they can stay with their friends. I had a bunch of people saying it's either the five of us or none of us. And I was like, it's all of you, to have the first pass to prove, that they can sit at the table, I cannot take it.
And have you been vaccinated?
I will have my second injection, then I'm going to have to wait for my pass. I'm actually in the same situation.
Yes, you heard that right. The same restaurant staff now obliged to demand a health pass from customers don't yet have to have one themselves. Under the new law, they have until the end of August to get vaccinated. Healthcare workers have until the middle of October. It's not just bars, restaurants and cultural venues that are covered by the new law. You also now need proof of vaccination, immunity or a negative test to attend routine hospital appointments, visit a retirement home or board an aeroplane or an intercity train. Outside the Gare du Nord, views were mixed.
For restaurants and cafes, I think it's a bit too much. But in public transport, I think it's like showing your ticket. It doesn't bother me.
I think it's perfectly normal. It was the only solution to get people moving again.
Now, for more on the biggest transfer in world football, perhaps ever, having completed his move from FC Barcelona, Lionel Messi has been unveiled at his new club, Paris Saint-Germain. The 34-year-old already has a full trophy case, but insists he's got plenty left in the tank. The BBC's Patrick Geary has more on how Messi became perhaps the greatest footballer of all time.
Rosario, Santa Fe, Argentina, and the unassuming home of a genius. You can still find Lionel Messi's work here, but the more indelible impression he's left in this place is the way he played football. He did the same things at 12 years of age as he does today, in a different setting and in different stadiums, but he was exactly the same. Leo completely absorbed everything you threw his way. I've got goosebumps. He was the real deal. While Messi was developing rapidly as a player, his body wasn't keeping pace. He was diagnosed with a growth hormone deficiency aged 10. At 12, he'd be injecting himself every night.
You need it to work normally. If you don't have growth hormone, or you don't have enough growth hormone, you will not grow, and your genetics are decided for you to grow. The treatment is to replace growth hormone by injections. If you know any diabetic person that injects himself insulin, this is a very similar kind of device to inject growth hormone.
Not only was that a tough regime for a child, it was also hugely expensive. Amid an economic crisis in Argentina, his family headed to Catalonia to find Lionel a club. Barcelona signed him up and funded the rest of his treatment, and his new teammates knew they were playing alongside someone special.
He makes you better. He makes everyone around him better. And as I said, you can throw him a bomb and he will make it good. I mean, he's surrounded by super players, and he almost got the capacity to get away from it, to play 1-2 in a difficult position. He's so unpredictable. That's what makes him so good.
Your feedback now, and there's still lots of it coming in on this roadmap, the COVID roadmap, on isolating at home a trial for business. This person says, I wonder how the self-isolation is going to work. Folk have to get home first,
possibly via a few domestic airports, public transport, shuttle, taxi, Uber, or someone from the family picking the traveller up. I think it's much more realistic to house these travellers for a few days until a few negative tests come through. Other people are saying, why does business get to go first? My daughter, who's a registered nurse living in Melbourne, wants to come home to live. She can self-isolate in a rental, is fully vaccinated. We need nurses. And another person says, excellent, so now the boomers are vaccinated, the rest of us get to be experimented with and put at risk. So predictable. Now, that's all we've got time for. Nights and lately will keep you posted throughout the night. Kote kaupapa tuatani popo from 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. First up looks at how different life will be for people who've been vaccinated compared to those who haven't.
And I'm Brian Crump, getting ready for another night on RSPdx National. Now, normally we'd be getting the news headlines, but for some reason we are not. So I'm guessing that's because there's some problem with the line. Because no the news headlines come out of Auckland, and I'm in Wellington. So apologies for that.